discovered. Sarah had disappeared. Every parent's nightmare.
We're just a very ordinary family, and everybody could see themselves in us.
The nation is shocked by the murder of an innocent child. The killer has a secret past. It would be up to a jury to lock up a loathsome killer for good. On the beautiful summer's day of July 1st, 2000, the Payne family is enjoying one of their regular visits to Dad Michael Payne's parents' home on the Sussex coast.
Kingston Gorse is right on the sea. It's in a private estate, cornfields everywhere, fields, and just ideal place for children to be, really.
This Saturday afternoon, the family had enjoyed a meal at the grandparents' home before heading out for an early evening walk.
Headed towards the beach, and the children were sort of just running backwards and forwards around us as we were walking down, and wanted to play. Said, could they stay? Now, the boys were 13, 14. There was no reason why I would have said no, they couldn't stay out. The girls pleaded for them to be able to stay with their brothers. So we said yes. You know, it's a decision that I will regret for as long as I live.
Michael and Sarah Payne leave their children playing on the beach and slowly make their way home. Meanwhile, 13-year-old Lee, Luke, Sarah, and younger sister Charlotte abandoned the beach to play in a field nearby, just 500 yards away from their grandparents' house. But after a fall, 8-year-old Sarah decides she's had enough and heads off to the house alone. As the oldest, Lee is worried about her sister. He tries to catch up with her, but after slipping through a gap in the bushes, she disappears. By the time the other children return to their grandparents' home, they are surprised Sarah isn't back yet. By 8 p.m., Sarah is still missing.
We searched everywhere. You know, we searched every little offshoot of the lane, every little wooded area, the fields. We went back to the beach, just up and down, up and down, up and down, and that continuous panic.
Sarah! Sarah!
At dusk, Sarah's mother makes the decision to call the police.
If I call you through the police emergency, what's the problem?
I've lost my 8-year-old daughter. She's been missing about an hour and 3/4 now.
Right, and you are in...
We're in Kingston Gorse, Peak Lane.
And what's your name, please?
Payne.
And what's the name of the little one that's missing?
Sarah.
Within the hour, Sussex police begin a detailed search of the immediate area.
Sarah!
They draft local residents to help, but there is no sign of the 8-year-old. Police decide to call in reinforcements.
I got a call to say they were getting increasingly concerned and thought something more sinister might have happened.
The family carefully retraces their movements of the afternoon with the senior investigating officer, Alan Ladley. 13-year-old brother Lee is the last person to have seen his sister. What he tells investigators proves crucial. As part of their initial investigation, police check up on known sex offenders in the area. One of those on the list is Roy Whiting, a 41-year-old mechanic and occasional builder. He lives just 5 miles away from Sarah's grandparents' home on the Sussex coast, and he drives a white van. Less than 24 hours after Sarah's disappearance, police arrest and question him and carry out a thorough search of his house. Whiting claims that he had been close to home on the day Sarah went missing. But a gas receipt found in his van places him 20 miles away. It's suspicious, but it's not enough to detain him.
We had no further evidence at the time to indicate his involvement, but we did, however, retain the van for forensic examination.
Sarah's mother, desperate with worry, appeals to the public for help.
I can't imagine what Sarah means to us. We're a strong family, and we don't survive well apart. We need a home now, today, as quickly as we possibly can.
Michael and his wife Sarah's agonizing plight strikes a chord with the public. On Monday, July 17th, 2 weeks after Sarah's disappearance, a farmhand makes a horrific discovery in a field. 18 miles from where Sarah disappeared. It is the naked body of a little girl, badly decomposed and lying in a shallow grave. Michael and Sarah hear the news from their police family liaison officer, Sean Scott.
All the family were in the front room watching the news because the TV had just been on constantly in that 17 days. And Sean said, well, I have to speak to you now, and it has to be on your own.
Good afternoon. I have to make a very sad announcement that we found a body. We have been able to identify that the body in the field is Sarah Payne.
For police, the search for a missing person has just launched into a hunt for a killer. The place where 8-year-old Sarah Payne's body is found becomes a shrine to a daughter now grieved by an entire nation. The Payne family holds a memorial for the press and public, and then a private funeral. But Sarah and Michael's attention will quickly turn to finding out exactly what happened to their daughter and who is responsible. They start by returning their focus to Roy Whiting, the driver of the white van spotted by Sarah's brother minutes after he last saw her. Sarah's body had been found just 8 miles from the gas station where police know Roy Whiting stopped to buy fuel on the night of Sarah's disappearance. And there's another reason for police to now regard him as a serious suspect.
Roy Whiting had abducted a little girl some 4 years previously from Crawley, where he used to live. He had stripped her naked, but on that occasion had let her go.
Whiting pleaded guilty to abduction and indecent assault and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. He was regarded as a high-risk reoffender, yet in 1997, he was released after serving just 2.5 years. Whiting became one of the first people to be put on the sex offenders registry in Britain, a list held by the police, but not made available to the public. Still, apart from the gas receipt, police have nothing to link Whiting to Sarah Payne's murder. The forensic team, who had been meticulously examining evidence from Whiting's van, makes a significant discovery.
Out of the blue, we got a phone call from the Forensic Science Service to say that they'd started to examine a red sweatshirt that was found in Whiting's van. When they'd examined this sweatshirt, they found a hair on it, which matched Sarah.
The discovery proves Whiting had come into contact with Sarah, and it's enough for police to rearrest him. During interviews, Whiting is awkward and obstructive.
No comment.
He spent the whole interview saying no comment. He refused to make a comment on any of the questions we asked.
Then there's another crucial breakthrough. Police had been unable to recover any of Sarah's clothing, but after appealing to the public for help, a woman comes forward with information.
She had seen a black shoe at a crossroads, which is broadly halfway between the Buck Barn garage, where the petrol receipt came from, and the site where Sarah was found. By luck, the shoe was still there.
Forensic examination of the shoe not only proves it was Sarah's, but its Velcro strap links it to Whiting. Fibers attached to the Velcro match a clown pattern curtain found by police in Whiting's van. Sarah's shoe is the only piece of her clothing to be recovered, but it's the damning evidence they've been looking for.
At 3:20 p.m. this afternoon, Roy William Whiting was charged with the murder of Sarah Payne.
Roy Whiting's arrest on July 31st is a triumph for police. But for Sarah and Michael, the fact that the suspect is a convicted sex offender is shattering.
I was angry. I was really angry, and I was angry because I felt I'd been lied to. Not by the police, but by the system, if you like. I was a mum, and I had no idea that you could abduct a child, go to prison, and be out. To do it again.
Michael and Sarah are careful not to prejudice the case against Roy Whiting by revealing what they know about him. But they do begin a campaign to introduce Sarah's Law. They are inspired by Megan's Law, legislation introduced in the U.S. in 1994 following the rape and murder of 7-year-old Megan Kanka by a known child molester. Sarah's Law would allow parents controlled access to the sex offenders registry to find out if known sex offenders have access to their children. With the public support and new legislation in the works, the question remains, do prosecutors have the undeniable proof they need to lock up a sex offender for good? Emotions are running high in the winter of 2001, nearly a year and a half after the murder of 8-year-old Sarah Payne. Roy Whiting arrives at Lewes Crown Court in East Sussex. He has pleaded not guilty and prepares to defend himself. When the trial begins, Sarah and Michael must face the man accused of their daughter's murder.
We got into the courtroom and it was tiny, and I just realised how close everyone would be to everyone else, and that frightened me. I was terrified of how I would react. I was terrified of what I might do. I was terrified of what Mike might do.
As is standard in a British court, the judge turns down the prosecution's request to refer to Whiting's previous conviction for the abduction and indecent assault of a 9-year-old girl. The jury will only have evidence from this case on which to determine Whiting's guilt or innocence. The prosecution calls members of the Payne family to the witness stand. Sarah's brothers give their evidence by video link. Sarah's mother also takes the stand.
She kept calm. She didn't use the expression lose it, where she might well have done. There was a dignity about her.
The prosecution introduces the DNA evidence from the shoe and the red sweatshirt. The court also hears that police have found a potential abduction kit in Whiting's van, which includes rope, 2 plastic ties, a knife, and baby oil. It is revealed that on the weekend Sarah went missing, Whiting had altered the rear doors to his van and removed paneling and partitioning in a possible attempt to change its appearance and to eliminate evidence.
You couldn't avoid the fact that the interior of the van had been significantly changed in the sense of removing what maybe the jury thought was a rather convenient little room in the back of the van.
Next, the prosecution suggests that changes to Whiting's own appearance that same weekend look suspicious.
There was evidence from somebody who was struck by the fact that he looked as if he'd been steam cleaned.
The pathologist takes the stand. She reveals that Sarah died as a result of asphyxia or strangulation. When her testimony turns to the extent of a possible sexual assault on Sarah, it proves unbearable for the Paynes.
It was horrible evidence to listen to for any parent. Understandably, both Michael and Sarah didn't stay in the court to listen to that evidence. "15 days into the trial, the prosecution rests. And the defense counsel addresses the court.
His defense was, obviously, A, it wasn't me, B, I wasn't there.
They allege that the police evidence is contaminated.
Whiting's defence was simply that the hair on the sweatshirt, which was his sweatshirt, was there because of poor police procedures, and that the fibres aren't the fibres that it is suggested they are.
Then, to the horror of the Payne family, the defense calls Roy Whiting to testify.
I just stared at him and willed him to look at me in the eye. Just look at me.
In week 3 of his highly publicized murder trial, Roy Whiting takes the stand in his own defense.
I just stared at him and willed him to look at me in the eye. Just look at me. And he never did, not once.
When Whiting is cross-examined by prosecutor Timothy Langdale, his testimony is weak.
Mr. Langdale turned to Roy Whiting and said, "Mr. Whiting, why are you here in court today?" And Whiting, who had this very nasal voice, said, "I just want the jury to know the truth." And Mr. Langdale, long pause, theatrical pause, and he said to Roy Whiting, "Mr. Whiting, you're going to be in the witness box for some time, and when I've finished answering my questions of you, I think the jury will know the truth."
Whiting does a poor job of clarifying his exact movements over the weekend of Sarah's disappearance.
He'd been out driving in his van on the Saturday evening, just aimlessly driving about.
Whiting struggles to explain how he came to be in the vicinity of the field where Sarah's body was found, and has trouble defending the changes he made both to himself and his van.
Mr. Langdale's cross-examination, I've always referred to it as the unravelling of a knitted scarf. He plucked at the bottom of this scarf and just pulled away strand after strand. As he walked back to take his place in the dock, you just knew that Mr. Langdale had done for him.
After 19 days of highly emotional testimony, on December 10th, 2001, the jury retires to consider its verdict.
We were very, very confident at first, but then the jury were out for 2.5 days, I believe, and it just went on and on and on, and we were just waiting, feeling sick, just feeling, please, 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 please convict this man, don't ever let him out again.
Finally, the judge asks the jury forewoman to address the court.
I remember her looking directly at me. She broke down in tears as she was speaking, but she came back with guilty, and then she sort of snarled it, you know, she said, guilty.
Only after the verdict is announced does the judge reveal to the jury Whiting's previous conviction for child abduction and indecent assault.
A couple of the men actually leant forward and grabbed a couple of the women on their shoulders to say, told you so. And that was very emotional. A couple of women were crying in the jury then.
Found guilty of abduction and murder, the judge hands Whiting a life sentence.
I just remember listening to the judge's words and just breaking down, really, first time in time, really, that I allowed myself just to cry.
I think the words were, you are every parent's and every grandparent's nightmare.
This doesn't make us happy, but justice has been done. Sarah can rest in peace now. But let's make sure that this stops happening time and time again.
In recent years, Sarah has suffered the breakup of her marriage, as well as several serious stress-related illnesses. But despite it all, she has continued to fight. In 2009, the British government appointed Sarah Victims Champion, providing a voice for victims of crime. She was also honored by the Queen. In 2011, thanks to her efforts, Sarah's Law was finally rolled out across the United Kingdom.
You can now walk into any police station in the country and ask about somebody that has a relationship with your children. You can ask about their previous offences, if they have any, or previous convictions.
For Sarah, this piece of legislation is a lasting memorial to her daughter.
She made us wake up. That's what she did.